My girlfriend complained, "These meal kits are so boring." I replied, "Let me order you a special one." The next box arrived. Inside wasn't food, but printed photos of her and her lover, along with an eviction notice. I had the next delivery address changed to her parents' house. Man, I gotta tell you, the whole thing fell apart over a simple delivery box. Look, I'm Lucas, I'm 34, and I manage logistics for a huge shipping company here in New York City. My brain is wired for supply chains, optimization, and predictable outcomes. That's how I live. But Ava, my girlfriend, she was the perfect structural flaw. She was 32, worked in sales, and was all about that spontaneous, live-in-the-moment chaos. I signed us up for the high-end meal kits. Why? Because it was smart, it was efficient, it was healthy, and it helped us save for a house down payment. Every decision was supposed to count. But every time that box showed up on our doorstep, she started complaining. "Lucas, these are so boring," she'd whine, tossing the recipe card onto the counter. "There's no excitement. It's the same 4 ingredients in a different configuration every single time." And I realized that's exactly how she saw me and our life. Predictable, functional, but utterly lacking in excitement. She wanted spontaneous luxury. I wanted a stable foundation. The conflict intensified when her travel schedule picked up. She'd be gone for 3 or 4 nights to Boston or Philly, always vague about the itinerary. I started tracking the patterns. I'm a logistics specialist, after all. Her receipts were always from the same boutique hotels. Her credit card statements showed charges for 2 at dinner. And the alibi? She always insisted we keep the meal service active, precisely because it gave her an ironclad excuse for dinner at home. I was paying for her high-end lifestyle and her cover story. I was funding her deception. The final blow came the night she complained about the boring food. She was already pushing the limits, clearly just returned from a client meeting that didn't smell like an office. She looked at the perfectly good, organic ingredients on the counter and wrinkled her nose. "These meal kits are so boring," she complained. I looked at the woman who saw my stable effort as a failure of imagination. "You're right," I replied calmly. "Let me order you a special one." I knew I couldn't beat her emotional arguments with logic. I had to meet her absurdity with absolute, crushing logistical precision. She used the supply chain to lie. I was about to use the supply chain to deliver the truth. So, after I told her, "Let me order you a special one," the tension in the apartment was suddenly gone. I had said something, and she thought she'd won. But here's the thing you gotta know about people like me. I don't get mad, I run queries. The second she went to the bathroom, to take a stress shower or whatever, I was on my laptop. I didn't go snooping through her DMs or her trash. That's amateur hour. I went straight for the shared accounts. I manage supply chains, right? So I know that everything leaves a data trail. You can lie to a person, but you can't lie to the algorithms. I cross-referenced her client trips with our joint credit card statements. The receipts weren't the red flag. It was the timing and location symmetry that killed me. Every single time she was in Boston for a client, I found 2 parallel purchases, one for a hotel room and one for a late-night high-end Italian restaurant. Always Italian. But the real devastating clue was in the digital wallet app. You know how you can sometimes see the name of the recipient if they split a bill? I found a dozen split receipts for Ubers, dinner reservations, even a couple of museum tickets. The name wasn't a client. It was Mark. Mark! A guy she used to complain about from her office, calling him smarmy and too ambitious. I guess he was ambitious enough to steal my girl, huh? I felt sick, man. Not angry yet. Just this deep, cold disappointment. It was the realization that my entire stable system had been corrupted by something cheap and predictable. But that sickness passed quickly. I got back to work. I had the facts. Now I needed the delivery method. This is where my job came in handy. Our meal kit service? I knew their entire fulfillment process. I knew where the boxes were packed, when they were sealed, and how to intervene without triggering a single system alert. I used my own company's software to track the next delivery's unique ID. Then, I made one phone call to a warehouse manager I know, a guy who owes me a huge favor from a botched shipment last year. I didn't tell him the truth. I just said, "Hey, I need a custom insert on box number 8874. It's a personal gag gift. Family joke. Just photos and a document. Can you swap the ingredients for my insert before sealing?" He laughed, thought it was a prank, and said, "Done. Anything for you, Lucas." I spent the rest of the night printing the evidence. Photos of Ava and Mark at that same Italian restaurant, copies of the split Uber receipts, and the final piece of documentation: the eviction notice. I had already talked to the landlord. Since the lease was only in my name, another smart logistical choice, I had them draft the document, effective immediately, citing the lease violation clause about unauthorized guests. I packaged it all up, the pictures of her and Mark smiling together, the official eviction paper, and a note written in the clearest, coldest terms. That box, the one she complained was boring, was about to become the most exciting delivery of her entire life. So the plan was simple, right? Get the evidence into her hands, but make her think it was a gourmet dinner. The delivery was scheduled for Tuesday afternoon. I didn't tell Ava I was coming. I just drove out to the warehouse, which, I gotta tell you, felt totally surreal. I met the guy who owed me the favor, a dude named Mark, at the loading dock. He just grinned when he saw the file I handed him. "You really swapping a prime rib for divorce papers, Lucas?" he asked. "It's about data integrity, Mark," I told him, "and this is the final report." He sealed the box perfectly, slapped the shipping label on it, and I watched it load onto the delivery truck. It looked exactly like every other meal kit box we ever got. That was the beauty of it. I drove back to the city, parked my car where I could see the lobby, and waited. I had my phone set to notify me the second the package was marked delivered. The doorbell rang at our apartment, the apartment that was about to be mine alone, at 4:15 p.m. I saw it all happen on the building's security feed, which I still had access to. Ava opened the door. She was in a yoga outfit, looking annoyed that her evening routine was interrupted. The delivery guy handed her the box. She signed for it quickly. She didn't know the most important delivery of her life had just happened. About 30 minutes later, the first sign of trouble flashed on my phone, a frantic text from her. "Ava. Lucas, what the hell is this?" "This isn't food. It's pictures of Mark." She was still confused. She thought it was a prank. "Ava. Did you pay someone to send me pictures of Mark?" This is psychotic. What is wrong with you? She was ignoring the elephant in the box. The second piece of paper I knew was sitting right under the glossy photos. I didn't reply to her. I waited for her to find the real kicker. A few minutes later, her call came through. Hysterical. Loud. The kind of raw panic you can't fake. "Lucas, my key doesn't work. The lock has changed, and I just found a letter. You filed for eviction?" "That's right. I hadn't filed the divorce first. I filed the eviction notice with the landlord, citing the lease violation clause about unauthorized overnight guests, Mark." I hit her where she lived, literally. "I'm at the front door." "This is my house. You can't do this," she screamed. I knew the neighbors could hear her, and I knew she hated looking bad in front of strangers. I replied with a single calm text, repeating her own earlier language. "You wanted a special delivery, Ava. You got it. And I gave you all the space you needed." I immediately drove to a safe house I'd rented a month prior, a small, quiet place where I could breathe. The storm was officially raging, and I was safely miles away from the eye of the hurricane. She spent the next 2 hours calling her sister, yelling about the crazy eviction notice and the psychotic picture delivery. She still hadn't grasped the simple truth. She lost because she got too comfortable lying in my supply chain. The chaos outside my apartment building was just phase 1, right? Now came the real fun, watching her try to spin this story. I knew Ava would go for the jugular. Her entire defense strategy was always the same. Lucas is controlling and jealous. Sure enough, the phone calls started filtering in through my friend Mark. Not the Mark she was cheating with, my friend Mark. He was the designated proxy for all the drama. "Dude, your ex is losing it," Mark reported. "She's telling everyone you filed for eviction because she asked to get a pet." She totally skipped the part about the pictures. I smiled. That was the setup. I had proof, but I wanted her to bury herself first. The final blow to her social life wasn't the eviction notice, it was the delivery address. Remember that box? The one with the photos and the notice? I had made an extra label for the next week's meal kit delivery. I used the delivery service's system one last time. I changed the final, last ever delivery address, which I knew she wouldn't cancel, to her mother's house in Connecticut. But the contents of that box were even better. Inside wasn't food, wasn't an eviction notice. It was a single item. It was a copy of the itemized receipt from her client trip to Boston, showing her purchasing 2 tickets for a concert I knew she and Mark went to. I included a small, crisp note. "I thought your mother deserved to see the evidence of your business travel, too." A few days later, Mark called me back, but his voice was different. He wasn't amused. He was stunned. "Lucas, something insane happened. Your landlord just called me. He's saying you put a restraining order on the apartment." I cut him off. "Forget the landlord. Tell me about the mail from Connecticut. Did anything happen up there?" Mark paused. "Yeah. Ava's mom, Diane, is freaking out. She just got this weird delivery box from your meal kit service. It was addressed to Ava. Inside was a bill. Not just a bill, Mark. The itemized proof of her lifestyle and her lies. I sent it to the only person who still thought she was a genius. The chain of events was brutal. Ava had burned her bridge with me. Now, her paranoia made her burn her bridge with her own family. She immediately accused her mother of spying on her and lost the only safety net she had left. Her former friends were split. Half thought I was an evil genius for the logistics of the box. The other half thought she was a genuine sociopath for thinking she could get away with it. But the important thing is, I was gone. She had no idea where I was. I just let the confusion she created destroy her own support system. She wanted excitement and chaos. I made sure she got the full, unedited version delivered right to her doorstep. So, after the Connecticut box dropped, the one with the receipt showing her Boston lies, I knew I had to face her one last time. Not to fight, but to close the book. She was still trying to camp outside the apartment, texting me these crazy, panicked messages about illegal eviction and stolen security deposits. She hadn't left New York. I drove back into the city. I didn't tell her where I was. I just texted her a simple location, the coffee shop on the corner of 5th and 54th. Neutral ground. I got there first, ordered a black coffee, and waited. I wore a simple hoodie, nothing fancy. I wanted her to see the boring guy she threw away, not the evil genius she imagined. She showed up 10 minutes late, looking like pure chaos. No makeup, hair everywhere, wearing an expensive silk scarf over sweatpants. She looked like someone who hadn't slept in 3 days. "Lucas, what the hell is wrong with you?" she hissed, not even saying hello. "My mother is screaming at me. My keys don't work. You're trying to ruin me over a disagreement." "It wasn't a disagreement, Ava," I told her, my voice quiet. "It was theft and lying about your whereabouts. You chose chaos. I chose consequences." She pulled out the eviction notice I had slipped under the door. "This says I have no rights." "That's illegal. I helped pay bills." "You paid the electric bill for 2 months, Ava." "I paid the mortgage, the insurance, and the entire logistical structure that supported your life for 4 years. The judge sees you as a guest who overstayed her welcome. She resorted to her final weapon: projection. You're the selfish one. You never cared. You just wanted a maid and a stable background for your boring job. I let her rage wash over me. Then I delivered the cold truth she needed to hear, using the language of my trade. You're right. I'm a logistics manager. I manage supply chains. You, Ava, were the broken link in my supply chain. You misused the resources, my money. You provided a false manifest, your alibis. And when the system flagged an error, my suspicion, you tried to sabotage the central server, my sanity, to avoid being held accountable. I didn't ruin you, Ava. I simply performed a system termination. She was speechless. She wasn't fighting a man anymore. She was fighting an algorithm. I'm done, Ava, I said, sliding a final signed document across the table. I've settled your remaining share of the security deposit. The apartment is mine. You need to leave New York. She grabbed the check, the money instantly more appealing than the fight. But then she looked at me one last time, real tears finally mixing with her smudged eyeliner. You really don't care at all, do you? I cared enough to get out, I replied, and that was the final hardest piece of logistics I ever had to manage. So she took the final check, the one for the security deposit, and just like that, the curtain dropped on our 4 years together. But the story wasn't over until the logistics were totally locked down. I needed her out of New York, man. I needed that total separation. I knew she'd try to stick around, crash on a friend's couch, and generally maintain her chaotic energy in my city. She had a network here, or so she thought. The first thing I did was call the moving company I'd hired to take my own stuff out. I paid them extra to swing by her old workplace and pick up the rest of her belongings she'd left there, all her boxes of samples and inventory. I had everything shipped straight to her parents' place in Florida. No warning, no address verification, just sent it south. That was the real eviction notice. The best part of the whole debacle was the email I got the next day. Not from her, but from her boss. He wasn't angry about the chaos. He was confused about the inventory. He noticed a ton of high-value merchandise that Ava was supposed to be selling was missing. I wrote back, I can't comment on inventory. I can only confirm that all of Ava's personal property has been redirected to her permanent address. I wasn't accusing her of stealing from her job, but I established a paper trail that made her look highly suspicious, all thanks to my logistical records. The chaos she created was now infecting her professional life. Then came the call from her best friend, Maya. She was crying, saying Ava was totally homeless and panicked. Lucas, you can't just send all her stuff to Florida. She needs her passport for a job interview. She should have planned ahead, Maya, I told her. My responsibility ended when I handed her the check. I hope the interview in Florida goes well, I added. That was the final, devastating piece of evidence Maya needed. She realized I had already planned Ava's departure route and destination. The truth about the space she needed hit her hard. Ava wasn't just evicted from the apartment. She was evicted from the entire city. I went back to the empty apartment one last time to change the locks. The silence was profound. No more frantic calls, no more screaming on the street, just the sound of a very clean system running perfectly. I looked out the window at the New York skyline, and I finally understood what freedom smelled like. Absolutely no chaos. 6 months passed. And I'm telling you, that silence, it wasn't loneliness. It was the sound of a system finally running clean, the feeling you get when you uninstall 4 years of malicious software. I moved out of New York. I sold the furniture that held all the bad memories and used the money to buy a small, quiet house in upstate New York. Not the boring suburbs she hated, but a place with real trees and no constant noise of sirens. I started my new life. I didn't date. I just focused on my work and myself. I spent hours researching complex algorithms, the thing she called boring, and found profound peace in that logic. Ava, meanwhile, was completely ejected from the city. I didn't need to check. She couldn't afford to stay. I heard through my former cleaner that she tried to crash on friends' couches, but no one wanted the liability. She ran out of favors fast. The biggest shock was when she had to move back to her mom's place in Florida, the exact scenario she had always tried to avoid. She was confined to the small, cramped childhood room she hadn't seen since college. I felt no anger. I just saw the data. She traded her financial solvency for a moment of chaos. The exchange rate was brutal. Her glamorous, spontaneous life dissolved because she failed to manage the simplest logistics: accountability. I kept the money I secured. I invested it, watching it grow predictably, cleanly. It was the absolute opposite of her impulsive spending. I look out at the quiet stability I built, my secure job, my debt-free life, my absolute independence. Ava wanted me to hold space for her irresponsibility. I did. I held the space, and when she didn't come back to fill it with anything real, I reclaimed the entire room. I realized that my true victory wasn't the eviction. It was the fact that I finally enforced the value of my own time and peace. The constant anxiety that I had lived with for 4 years, the fear of the next unexpected bill, the next ridiculous demand, was gone. My life is quieter, cleaner, and built on the solid code of honesty. She wanted space. I gave her the physical space of her mother's apartment and the emotional space of my absolute indifference. That was the perfect closure.